this one really hits home, especially for those of us who consider ourselves, the creative types. It all started with this reflection from April 1st, 2023, and the big question is this: what happens to our creative work when we're on this, this journey of self-improvement?
Right.
So we're going to unpack that idea today, really explore how personal growth can either supercharge your artistic expression or maybe even get in the way a little bit.
Yeah, I think that tension is really at the heart of it.
Exactly. And we're going straight to the source, the reflection that sparked this whole conversation.
Awesome.
The core question there is, if you're putting all this effort into improving your personality, does your art kind of suffer? Does it get pushed aside? And then if you do take a break, what's it like coming back to it,
Like finding your way back to that creative space after you've been so focused on personal development.
Yeah, exactly. And what's so interesting is, in the author's own experience, pursuing, what we often consider a good thing, right? Like higher consciousness.
Right.
Actually ended up creating some roadblocks for their music.
Yeah, that's what I found so fascinating too. This idea that self-improvement, which we usually think of as positive, could clash with the very nature of being an artist.
Yeah, it's almost like there's this inherent contradiction there.
Yeah, almost like you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole sometimes.
Right. And the author talks about these periods of taking breaks from their creative work. And then when they come back, they're drawn to those older ideas, or they're suddenly able to do things they felt were off limits before.
It's like their creative timeline got disrupted in a way.
Yeah, totally. And if we think about this, in the context of artistic identity, the author kind of proposes this idea that there's this fundamental consistency to an artist's core being.
Like an artistic DNA almost.
Yeah. And it's so connected to their creative impulses. And, they make this really striking comparison. They compare those heavily influenced personality changes to Stockholm Syndrome.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Right. And it makes you think, when those changes feel imposed rather than organic, could they be pushing you further away from your true artistic voice?
It's like, are you really changing, or are you just adapting to survive in a different environment?
Yeah. And here's where I think it gets super relevant for our listeners. The author raises this concern that in our quest to be better versions of ourselves, we might accidentally lose some valuable parts of who we are.
Right. It's like that old saying about throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly. And for artists, that could mean essential parts of your personality and your artistic potential getting tossed aside in this pursuit of some ideal.
And it's something to really think about, especially if you're considering seeking external guidance like therapy or coaching.
Yeah.
The author really encourages you to pause and consider what impact that could have on your art. Because even if you experience personal growth, there's this question that lingers. Could you look back and have regrets about those artistic years that you feel you maybe lost?
Right. And that's a tough question to wrestle with, right?
Absolutely, because it's about potential trade-offs on your creative path.
So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
And the source does acknowledge the flip side, the potential regret of not changing. But the main focus is really on this, this idea of inherent consistency in artists.
This idea that who you are as a person is deeply intertwined with your art.
Yeah, and that maybe radically changing who you are could be a form of self-deception that ends up sidelining that core creative self.
Exactly. And it's not to say that self-improvement is a bad thing.
Right.
But it's about approaching it mindfully, especially for those of us who are driven by our creative passions. It's about recognizing that deep connection between an artist's inner world and what they create.
So as you're listening to this and reflecting on it, this deep dive, we're really highlighting this intricate relationship between personal development and your artistic life.
Yeah, and how complex that relationship can be.
And the author's experience, it suggests that for creative people, self-improvement needs this thoughtful and nuanced approach.
Definitely. And it brings up this final question for you to consider, as you're navigating your own path of growth. How can you make sure you're nurturing those creative passions in a way that feels true to you?
Right.
How do you avoid accidentally sacrificing the very essence of your artistic voice or your artistic experiences in that quest to become a different version of yourself?
Yeah, that's a powerful question.
It is. It's a deeply personal one, and I think it's something worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation.
It really has.
So much to think about.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of you listening, keep those questions coming because we love exploring them with you. Until next time.
See you then.
Bye.